enough not to be caught in time before you reach the final stage of drug abuse. The damage is done, and you can cry all you want, but the damage is already done. So how important it is to be informed ahead of time, so that when you make choices, you know what you are doing. For young people who are preparing for life, okay, once you're through with your schooling, education, and training, you get a job, you want to start a family and live the rest of your life, you should know which way to go. And that is the main thrust of this presentation this week, to create an awareness, to teach our young people, to teach parents, to help, and also help themselves not to lead young people into drug abuse, because a big part of young people who get into drug abuse is because they have picked this abuse from parents who are not educated. They do not know, they're not aware, they do not know that they are giving examples to the young people. And the young people are admiring their status in society, their wealth status, just copy them, thinking they're following the right person and they're in the right direction. So this program is meant not just for the young people, but for the parents as well. And of course, for our church members to help to teach adventurers, pathfinders, the older youth, okay, the ambassadors and the youth, okay, to help them, to teach, to create an awareness for everybody. And of course, for our young people to be so well educated that they can help their colleagues at school. These things start in school, from colleagues who introduce you, your friends whom you admire, whom you want to be their friends and companions, and they lead you, and they, peer pressure. And you find yourself there. Our young people should be resilient enough to say no to wrong things, not just be people who are easily influenced to blindly follow others. Bendera of wataupepo, as we call them. People who are undecided. They're never sure of themselves. Wherever others lead them, they just follow blindly. Unfortunately, in this world, you cannot afford to just blindly follow people. You've got to know what you are following. Okay. But lastly, I am a sinner saved by the grace of God, a member of Eden Springs SDA Church in Utawala, and also a patron of the Nairobi University Adventist Students Church, Church. So I am happy and glad to be with you people and to be able to engage you in this program. Now, to introduce you to what we shall be doing in the whole week. Drug abuse awareness is usually a big topic, and I'll try to break it down into digestible parts. It's difficult to present it all at one go. At times, I've visited churches just for one day, preaching in the morning and in the afternoon, and time is always woefully inadequate. It is much better when you have it a whole week like this, spread out. So when you take small chunks of information, your grasp, understanding becomes better. You remember things longer, you remember things better. Okay, so for today, apart from that brief introduction of myself, we shall go through the introduction to drug abuse. We shall go through the drugs of abuse themselves. Which are these drugs which are abused? Is it only alcohol and bangi, which we know, and tobacco, or are there others? We shall go through that list of drugs which are abused. We shall go through certain definitions which will help us in our presentation throughout the week. And then we'll also look at the epidemiology of this problem. That is the size of this problem. Who gets problem of drug abuse? Okay, who gets it? Okay, that's epidemiology. And maybe if there is time, we do other things. But those are the main things. To introduce the subject, give you the list of the drugs, and show you the size of the problem, and help you understand certain things that are important for understanding this matter, this subject. The Ambo didn't tell me ahead of time how much time I have. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 40 minutes? I need to be aware so that I know how much to present. Valiant, are you with us?
Yes, Prof.
How much time do I have?
For today, we should be ending at 9. So maybe from tomorrow, we start from 8 to 9. So you'll be having 1 hour. But for today, we end at 9.
Okay, so thank you. So I know how much.
Now, unless you may want to extend with maybe around 10 minutes or 15.
We'll see how things go. Okay. So on my screen, I hope you are seeing my screen. On the screen, yes, okay, thank you. So drug abuse, drug use, okay, and abuse has been with humanity since the dawn of history. Drugs which were found experimentally to have pleasurable effects became abused. And today, the manufacture, sale, and distribution of these drugs is a multi-billion industry that shakes governments and controls world economy. Okay, and if anybody would like to doubt, just need to have a brief look, especially to some countries like Afghanistan, where most of the opium comes from, and China, and then the Central American countries like Colombia, Venezuela, and others, okay, where the people who manufacture cocaine and heroin, these people, it is big business. They are people with money, okay? The government can hardly touch them. You know, these are people who have their own big farms. They have their own army, fully armed to the tooth. Even the police don't dare. So it has been very difficult in some countries to control them. And it has been a long fight. Some are still challenges. Yeah, and other Central American countries. These people are powerful. They have the money. They can do anything. And in fact, in some countries, some of those countries, you can hardly be a leader. You can hardly be an MP, a minister, a governor, somebody worthwhile if you are not in tune with these people. They literally control the country, okay? And they are powerful. So where money is involved is serious business. People can tolerate you for many things, but when you begin to touch their money, wow, where they get their wealth from, well, you will face them, okay? Now, so the use of these drugs involves all sectors of the population, okay? Literally everybody, all sectors, from the rich to the poor, educated to the illiterate, the lonely to the mighty, children, youths, adults, elderly, males, females. It affects families, churches, yes, many church members, yeah, directly or indirectly, yeah. You may be a faithful church member, but your spouse. The parents may be faithful church members, but your children, your brothers and sisters, your parents. So either you're affected directly or affected indirectly by this problem. It is all around everybody. The church is involved, including church members involved, our own children. It is always a pain to see our young people, young people brought up in church, and later when they are through with school or during time, of independence from their parents, because they never got grounded. They never really appreciated and understood the seriousness of this matter and what is involved. And so in peer pressure in college or secondary time, they get involved until they are deep in it, and you find your own young church members, even people who are baptized, involved in alcoholism and drug abuse. And sometimes even senior church leaders' children, elders' children, pastors' children. Oh, it is always a pain. It's always a pain and a misery for these parents and for the church at large when our young people get involved. It just tells you that somewhere we have failed. Governments, okay, governments are involved, and many civil servants. So I tell you, got even chiefs and policemen. Policemen who are supposed to keep a tab on the traditional alcohol brewers in the villages. You get the brewers literally go to the police stations and to the chiefs every day, giving them money to keep quiet, so that they are not harassed. They can make their brews and sell it, without problems. So the government is heavily involved. Then educational institutions, primary schools, secondary schools, many of our teachers. This is one of the things that makes this problem very challenging. When your teacher whom you admire, the person you want to copy, you see him engaging in smoking and drinking, it just tells you, there's nothing wrong with this thing. It is innocent pleasure. The church, people who are talking against alcohol, and they just say yapping. There's nothing wrong with these things. And indeed, there are people who drink and smoke, and they look okay. They are doing their work. They are managing their families and wives. They don't seem to have a problem. And so people feel encouraged. The young people feel encouraged. So this thing involves everybody. Nevertheless, despite this, their use, the drugs of abuse use, has resulted in disease affecting all organs of the body and systems of the body. It has brought delinquency from school dropouts, crime when you can't get enough money to drink or take cocaine. They rob, they rob people, they break into houses, sell their best things to get the money. So they steal, they rob, they do anything to get the money. This thing has brought poverty, poor family, women and children. When the man drinks silly, he gets a salary and he drinks all of it. There are people who, when they get a salary, they will disappear for a week until all the money has been drunk. Only a little is left for rent and a few other expenses. Much of the money is drunk. Okay, and there are some young people, when they get a salary, they will not report to work for a week. Okay, so this thing brings poverty. Money is scarce. So when you're already wasting it in your own pleasures, disregarding your family, it brings poverty to the family and economic deprivation. The growing of tobacco causes soil damage. Okay, when people are drunk, okay, there is violence. Some people become abusive and violent when they're drunk. People who take bangi, when they drink and smoke, when you hear stories of young people, a child you are born, brought up, you wiped his susu and his poo-poo, you fed him, you clothed him, you took him to school, you took good care of him, only for this young man to become wayward, drop out of school, become a drunkard, a bank smoker, violent, begins to beat his parents and rob them, and even rape their mothers. Oh, God help us, God help us, God help us, yeah. I many times tell people of this story of a young man from my place who became wayward, way up when he was young, and he could never survive in school because he was always fighting his fellow classmates and schoolmates, and eventually fighting teachers and prefects, and eventually had to leave school. And of course, such people, even getting a job is a challenge. Yeah, you give them casual work, they will fight those who have given them the work. They will fight other workers, construction sites, wherever there is this casual works. They don't fit, they keep fighting, quarreling, fighting everybody. They end up arrested, they end up, yes, all that violence. So this young man, Way White, could not even survive in the jobs. He randered in the towns in Nairobi and Mombasa. Eventually now it was too much. He had to go back home. When he went back home, he continued his smoking and drinking. And one time he decided to rape his own mother. Yeah. And then he did it repeatedly. And so one time when the father came and found him, the mother was crying. And the mzee took a rungu to rescue his wife. The young man beat him, took a panga and chopped him to pieces. When you hear such stories, where are we heading to? Drug abuse or violence, and of course, worst of all, the health consequences, malnutrition and death. So these consequences of drug abuse have increased in the last few decades, causing a hue and cry in societies and for governments. And as a result of this, so as a result of this, concerned people, governments, through various organizations, have bound themselves to special efforts and measures with the legislation to fight drug abuse worldwide. And so we have various conventions which have been signed by governments worldwide, from the United Nations to World Health Organization to UNICEF. It's a problem everywhere. So there are various conventions which have been signed, and we in Kenya, our government also have made up efforts. We know that we have the government NGO, the government body NACADA, and the Ministry of Health Department of Non-Communicable Diseases, together with the Office of the President, working together. Various NGOs are involved in these efforts to prevent and control drug abuse. And so we have the tobacco control regulations passed in 2007, modified later in 2016. Then we have the Mututo 2010 alcohol control regulations, recognizing that, the drug abuse, alcoholism, tobacco smoking, they're not easy things to control. You can tell people, you can threaten them, but that doesn't stop them from preventing it. And so really what the government can do, you cannot fully ban it. It will effort that this banning this alcohol, banning Kenya breweries, BAT and other tobacco companies, banning the brewing of alcohol and manufacture and sale of tobacco before completely has not worked in the past because it only goes underground. And so all the governments have done is to make laws and regulations for use and control it. They will use it, but control it. And the purpose of education is to help people who have refused to see the sense, to at least help them stop on their own. So these laws are important. It helps control the way they are used. And so, it doesn't go to excess. Now, Kenya is, besides this, a signatory to the Single Convention on Narcotics Drugs of 1961, which was to prevent production and sale of drugs of abuse. Then the treaty was renewed in 1971, the Convention on Psychotropic Substances of 1971. In 1988, the UN Convention on Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances was again reestablished, against drug trafficking. And so in every country, including here at Kenyatta Airport and all our airports, you have the anti-narcotics and drug abuse police units with their sniffer dogs, trying to sniff to find out people who are bringing these drugs into the country, And then the 1994 Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, again, an addition to these other conventions. So that brings me to the epidemiology of these drugs, the size. So we have seen that this is a big problem, and governments worldwide are involved in the effort. And we as a church, of course, the Adventist Church, among all other institutions, are leading in this matter. Okay, ICPA was formed in 1958, way back even before the governments started this fight. And we've been there. ICPA Kenya was formed in 1972. Okay, helping the government in various ways in this war. So, but statistically, how big is the problem? You've seen it involves all sectors of society, ages and sexes. Now, this problem starts mainly in youth, children from 9 years upwards. It starts around 8, 9 years, but it peaks at about 14, 15 years, just the age when the young people are finishing primary or starting secondary school. That is the peak age of confusion when this problem, people join it. Now, globally, the global picture, in 2012, there were up to 162 to 324 million people, okay, of the world population aged 15 to 64 years who are using illicit drugs. Now remember, there are legal drugs of abuse and there are illicit drugs of abuse. That is illegal. Okay, illegal drugs include cannabis, opioids, okay, like morphine and other opioid painkillers, cocaine, amphetamines, okay, heroin, and other amphetamine-like compounds. This was a report by UN DOC of 1914. The report was of 2014. Then there was globally noted an increase in substance use drugs between 1990 and 2010. An increase of 37.6%, increasing the global burden of disease. Now the specific drugs leading were cannabis, opioids, amphetamines, and injectable drugs. Alcohol was 37%, tobacco 3%. And in 2010, it was brought out, tobacco was the second most important risk factor for death after hypertension. And alcohol is responsible for 6% of deaths worldwide. Alcohol kills about 3.8 million people annually. Okay, tobacco kills 6.8 million people annually. Now, you have any idea how much that is? That would mean about 13,000 people dying per day. Okay, about 13,000 people dying per day. Okay, 13,000. How many jets? The big aeroplanes which carry 300-400 people. Yeah, it would mean something like about 50 jumbo jets falling down, okay, every day and killing everybody on board. You know, when just one plane, okay, comes down, killing everybody on board, it is a big issue. Yet here we have a problem of alcohol killing up to, tobacco killing up to, about 50 jumbo jet full of people per day. You know, if that was to happen, everybody would stop boarding planes. And it is taken, just casually as nothing. Okay. I will pass all those that a study in Nairobi among healthcare workers. Imagine, even us doctors, nurses, pharmacists, medics, the people who know the facts are involved in drug abuse. And this is what makes it difficult. Okay? If the professionals, people who know themselves, they know this thing is harmful, it is bad, know the problems, and they are themselves involved. Lifetime usage of drugs among these health workers in Nairobi was found to be 35.8% for alcohol, 23.5% for tobacco, 9.3% for bangi, cannabis, and 9.3% for the sedatives like Valium. Okay, 8.8% for cocaine, amphetamine 6.4%, hallucinogens like LSD 5.4%, and the opioid painkillers like morphine and heroin, okay, 3.9%. Inhalants, what you see the street boys doing with their gum bottles, okay, bottles of gum, they're sniffing all the time, okay. I will jump those details, and Coast Province seems to be one of the hottest spots, apart from Nairobi, the hot spots of drug abuse. And it's because these drugs mainly come by ship, okay, through the sea. Among the youth, of course, we'll go over it again. The alcohol, tobacco, and drug abuse are brought mainly by peer pressure. The example of the other young people, stress, people who are stressed and frustrated in life in one way or another, people with poor personality who are craving for courage, a young man who is so shy, cannot face a young girl, cannot face a lady, to have a discussion, have a friendship, okay, after drinking, feels courageous enough to face a lady squarely in the face, and tell her, you look nice, I like you, can we be friends? There are people who don't have, they have a problem. We are different, okay? So some of these people, just for courage, they drink. But of course, that is the beginning. You get into it, you become addicted, and you're undone. Then the worst bit is poor academic performance. I've seen so many young people. I've been teaching for years, and I've seen so many over and over, right from primary, secondary, college, university, even in the medical school, young people dropping out because of drug abuse. Oh, God help us. Problem of riots. We are familiar with schools being banned. Riots, strikes, police warnings, and, arrests. You will always find almost invariably the leaders of these strikes and banning of schools. They are these people who abuse drugs. Okay. Okay. So in summary, the overall drug abuse rates in Kenya, 37.1% for in 2012. And then the most commonly abused drugs or alcohol, tobacco, bangi, and miraa. Those four are leading. Alcohol, 30%. Tobacco, 16.7%. Bangi, 5.4%. And miraa, 8.9%. Heroin, cocaine, and others, they are fewer. They are massively fewer. But maybe it's because they are very expensive and more difficult to get. And so, as I noted before, the earliest years of starting drug abuse is 8 years for most drugs, 8 to 9 years. Peaks at 14 to 18 years. And it's rare after 19 years. Okay, after 19 years, if you use these drugs, now very few people get there, and that informs the decision that alcohol use should only be allowed to those who are above 18 years. Some countries we noted it is 21 years. It is safer. If you are allowed to start it when you are an adult, you are less likely to be hooked. Okay. So now the list of drugs which are abused. Now the list of drugs which are abused. Number 1 is alcohol. Second, tobacco. Number 3, bangi or marijuana. Weed, miraa or khat, and heroin, cocaine, LSD, lysergic diethylamide, lysergic acid diethylamide, okay. Inhalants, okay, those grams, MPTP, that is one of the drugs taken as tablets, ecstasy, Jimson weed, common botanical name Datura stramonium, mushrooms, certain mushrooms, then of course tea and coffee. Many of you young people take tea and coffee. You're not even aware that these things are addictive and can actually cause disease. Then we have, of course, therapeutic drugs. There are many drugs which we use in the hospitals, prescribed by medical professionals for specific diseases. But unfortunately, they also cause some excitement. Okay, so we have cough syrups, mainly the contents which are a problem are ephedrine and pseudoephedrine. Then we have painkillers like pethidine and morphine. We use them in the hospitals, but they're addictive. Okay. codeine compounds, okay, tablets, drugs containing codeine. Now, currently in Kenya, with the Kenya Pharmacy and Poisons Board, they are now strictly prescription drugs. You cannot just walk to a shop and buy them over the counter. Okay, then we have sedative drugs like Valium, phenobarbital. And so these drugs overall can be summarized as positive drugs, negative drugs, and hard drugs. Okay, the positive drugs are drugs which have some therapeutic use, but unfortunately, because they produce some excitement, okay, they're addictive. For example, are those sedatives like Valium and morphine. Then negative drugs, these are socially acceptable drugs, but they're addictive nevertheless. You know, society looks upon alcohol and tobacco as acceptable things. Okay, they're not banned. You're allowed to use them, but they are addictive and they are destructive. So tea, coffee falls there. They are very mild. Their effects are very mild. You cannot compare with these others. Okay. Then alcohol, miraa, cigarettes. So these are socially acceptable drugs. And that makes controlling them harder because the government is forced to acknowledge them and allow their use. Then the hard drugs, these ones, everybody knows the user, the government, and they are outlawed. Their use is illegal. So we have heroin, cocaine, bangi, and the others. Now we have a problem now that there's some debate on bang use, and some countries have legalized bang use. And some states in the US have legalized it, some European countries, but the debate goes on. Bottom line is that any drugs that cause addiction, dependence, and cause health problems should not be used freely. If at all they are used for medical indications, should be strictly regulated. Okay, so what are the factors that lead to drug abuse? There are genetic factors. Children who come from, it's been noted in studies that there are families where children are born and brought in a very separate environment, separated from their parents, and they still end up alcoholics. And then maternal twins, okay, identical twins, brought differently, and they end up both of them being alcoholics. Okay, gender. Drug abuse tends to be more in the men than the women because men are more daring, more adventurous, and they're more challenged with the societal pressure and expectations. But because of gender equality issues today, the women are employed, educated, they have money, and they don't know what to do with the money. They are quickly catching up with the men in drug abuse, alcoholism especially. Then, of course, ethnicity. There are certain genes which run in certain communities which either enhance drug abuse or prevent. Okay, the details we can talk about later. Then environment, okay, the influence of the family. If you come from a family where they brew alcohol or they have a bar and they sell it, and sometimes you are sent there to work in the bar, okay, the influence is natural. You're part of it. Then peer groups, okay, in school, institutions, at home. Then stress factors, okay? Then physical abuse by parents or anybody, sexual abuse, all of these things, the environment where you are can lead to drug abuse. Then availability. You're a pharmacist or you are a nurse, you are handling these drugs in the ward or in the pharmacy. The temptation to use them or using them by accident and discovering how pleasurable they are, you end up using them. The family problems where there is separation and divorce. The people who suffer most are children, and we always talk to families that please forgo your selfishness and pride. Hold your family together. Be faithful when you enter into marriage. Stop just breaking your family for the flimsiest of excuses. It's all selfishness and pride which is destroying families. Then ineffective parenting. For parenting, there must be a balance between being good on your parents' children and also disciplining them. There must be a balance. Don't let it not be laissez-faire, okay? Young people free to do whatever they want, go wherever they want, come in anytime they want, and nobody questions them. You are looking for problems. Young people have to be under control of their parents. And I know as a young person, when your parents are strict on you, you feel bad. You feel like you should be left free. But believe you me, later in life, you look back and thank your parents for being firm on you, saying you must be home at this time. If you're going somewhere, I must know. I need to know. I must know your companions and your friends. I don't want you to be friends with so and so. It's all in the good of our young people. Then, of course, curiosity. When you see people who use these drugs, people who drink, and they look happy or they seem to be okay, and you're just curious to find out, this thing we are being told is bad, but I wonder, let me find out. People who drink, they seem to be happier. Okay, so curiosity to find out what it is all about. Low self-esteem, to look cool, to get courageous, to feel high, and, airy, to forget financial stress, they can lead to abuse of drugs. Then peer pressure, of course. Then ignorance, when you are not aware of the consequences of these things. And of course, spiritual poverty. And the underlying issue in drug abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse is spiritual poverty. People not being in touch with God. So they do not know. They do not know God. They do not know the truth. Okay? Alcohol and drug abuse is more a problem of the ungodly than for the godly. Signs of drug abuse. When people get into drug abuse, how do you begin to, sense it? Okay? They will find a change in peer group. They change their peer group. Okay? Carelessness in grooming. Decline in academic performance. Somebody who was very bright suddenly just goes down to the bottom of the class. Loss of interest in favorite activities. Changes in eating habits. Changes in sleeping habits. Bad relationships with family members. They just can't rhyme with everybody. They are violent with their parents, with their brothers, sisters. Okay. So as young people, as these drugs are abused, you move through the various stages. Stage 1, 2, 3. Stage 1, you start using them, you get the pleasure. But stage 2, then the addiction and dependence sets in. And stage 3, now there is physical damage, especially to the brain, the mental functions. And at this stage, the damage done is irreversible. There are some physical clues you will see when young people abuse drugs. Okay, this includes IV drug users. They will have those injection scars, red watery eyes, sleepiness in the day, general tiredness and malaise throughout, isolation, they just want to be alone, confusion, drunken gait, daydreaming a lot, they talk so much, with so much affection, of these drugs. They talk of these drugs, they talk of people who abuse these drugs, they praise them, and when you are addicted to these drugs, it occupies your mind and your time. This is what they think of all the time. You may get the smell from their clothes, from their mouth, from their hands. They may be yawning a lot. They may have dry, cracked lips with discoloration, with constant lip licking. They may have goose pimples and sweating. Okay. And of course, those are the consequences, which I've already talked about. The arguments with colleagues, teachers, student trials, disturbances, strikes, and demonstrations, actual fires or threats to family, school, community, insults, arrests, problems with the police, disciplinary committees, issues in the school, crime, stealing, mugging, murder, rape, selling of parents' property, they land in jail, imprisonment, and of course the burning of schools is a problem. Okay, so now that brings me to, I think I'll just take 5 more minutes and I'm through, so that I give you the definitions, some of the definitions that, okay. Stop sharing, and then I share the screen. I go to abuse pharmacology. Okay, so this brings me to some of the definitions that I've already been using them and will continue using them. So definition number 1, addiction. What is this drug addiction. Addiction consists of a compulsive, relapsing drug use despite negative consequences. They are triggered by cravings that occur in response to, contextual cues. Okay, somebody who is a smoker. Okay, even if he's trying to stop, the moment he sees cigarettes or a cigarette tray, okay, that context triggers a craving. Okay, so this compulsive use is triggered by cravings, which commonly occur in certain contexts. Now, all addictive drugs, though different in their characteristic acute effects, they have in common induction of strong feelings of euphoria and reward. Okay, euphoria is defined as pathological happiness. Okay, this feeling of excitement and relaxation, you just feel, excited, happy, and at peace. Okay, it's not a normal feeling. It's pathological happiness. It's not natural happiness. And then the satisfaction, the reward. Okay, so the drugs that abuse, all of them, they cause some exciting feeling and some satisfaction. Okay, that's the reason alcohol, tobacco, and all these drugs are abused before abuse are taken. The excitement, the relaxed feeling that they produce in the users. Many of the patients, you will see somebody, an alcoholic, he has drunk, his liver has been chewed, he now has liver damage, cirrhosis, liver failure. They end up with liver cancer, but some even end up with liver failure before they develop cancer. And when you have liver failure, then you develop jaundice, yellowness of eyes and body, and fluid in the abdomen with swelling of feet. And they come to hospital and they are told, listen, after investigations, it is alcohol which is the problem. Told, please, you are very sick. That alcohol has damaged your liver. You have a very short time to live if you continue. Stop immediately. And they will be counseled and given educated. They promise never to take alcohol again, and they leave the hospital, and a few days they are in alcohol again. Okay, they are sick, but they can't stop using it. They know they are hurting themselves, but they can't stop. Tobacco, the same thing. Even when they have lung cancer, they have a problem stopping. So addiction is such a problem. There's a natural craving for these drugs. Even when you know it is harming you, you still can't help it. That is addiction. It is a psychological problem. Tolerance. When you start using these drugs, there is the excitement it produces in you, the excitement and relaxation. Now, with the repeated use of these addictive drugs, they induce adaptive changes in the body. And so the result of this is that you require escalated doses to produce the same pleasurable effect. Okay? If somebody, when he starts drinking, half a glass may be enough to make him feel tipsy. With the time, that is not enough. He becomes tolerant. He needs a glass. And with the time, 2 glasses. And with the time, bottles. And there you continue. You progressively need more and more to produce the same pleasure. Okay? This is because the body is trying to tolerate this abuse. Okay? Till there are people who can drink a case of soda and they're still walking. Okay, this is tolerance. Now, dependence. With the development of tolerance, when the abused drug is no longer used, the signs and symptoms of withdrawal become apparent. Okay, the body reacts with certain physiological reactions. A combination of such signs and symptoms constitute the withdrawal syndrome. So we call it withdrawal signs and symptoms. These withdrawal signs and symptoms are usually relieved by taking more of the drug. The withdrawal syndrome defines dependence. Dependence can occur with non-psychoactive drugs, okay, like organic nitrates and some of those cough syrup, the things that we find in the cough syrups. So people who work in industries, factories where you make nitrate compounds, they also can become dependent on those substances, and they have to be at work to feel well. because they are in touch with the drug. Okay, so you abuse a drug, you develop tolerance, then the body becomes dependent. So dependence is a physiological, a mechanical thing, but addiction is a psychological. One can actually be dependent on a drug without being addicted. That is, you use it, when you try to stop using it, you develop a reaction, and then you have to take more. You have to take more to suppress the reactions. You know, when you've been drinking continuously, when you stop, you will feel confused, agitated, body aches, backache, stomach ache, nausea, vomiting, you know, and it can be severe enough even to kill. We call it delirium tremens. Okay. So one can be dependent physically, and yet when they decide to stop, they are not, you know, psychologically, they are able to come out. Dependence invariably occurs with chronic exposure, but only a fraction of users develop the habit, okay, lose control and become addicted, okay, because there are people who drink, but they are able to control it. They're not quite alcoholic. They drink, yes, but they are able to control it. And we have seen that with cocaine users. We have seen that with some of the other drugs, okay. So addiction is not in everybody, okay? Dependence is invariable, but addiction, sometimes not everybody becomes addicted. Out of people who drink, just 1 to 2 or out of 10 will become addicted. They become alcoholics. They can't do without, if they don't drink, they can't function, okay? Relapse is very common among addicts even after they have been helped to stop. Drug abuse. Drug abuse now refers to abnormal use. Everything is as its function, but used wrongly, it becomes abnormal, okay? The same with food, water, fire. You know, anything good can be abused, okay? Can be used abnormally. And what is a drug? A drug is any substance or chemical which influences normal cellular physiologic function, either positively or negatively. Is tea and coffee a drug? Yes, they have an effect on living cells. Is mirror a drug? Yes. Banging, alcohol, tobacco, they all have an effect, either stimulating or inhibiting normal cell function. Okay, and next time I might touch a little on the actual mechanisms and really what damage do these drugs do. We will be looking at those for as we go through each of the drugs. So tomorrow I'll go through what the Bible says about drug abuse. On Tuesday, we'll go through alcohol as a drug. On Wednesday, tobacco. On Thursday, bang and mirror. On Friday, other drugs. And then finally, we'll finish with treatment and prevention. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Prof. We thank God for that wonderful introduction. May God bless you. I trust that everyone will be blessed as we attend. We are sorry that today we went overboard with a quarter an hour. There were slight issues with the start technical issue, but I trust that as we proceed over the week, everything will be fine. So we'll be jetting in some minutes to 8.
Yeah.
Between like 10 minutes to 8, I just request the technician that 10 minutes to 8, we are already on. Others can start getting in. Then there would be we are using prayer cells, so there will be short time for introduction and welcoming, prayer and welcoming of the speaker. After his presentation, there will be few minutes for questions and answers. You can ask directly or even give questions ahead of time, after which there will be a closure with prayer. So may God bless everyone. May we continue praying for the week and everything we put in God's hand. Thank you so much. We will finalize with a word of prayer from Prof. Then we just have a rest.
Okay, let us pray. Loving Father in heaven, I praise you and bless your name for your goodness, for your love and mercies for us. Oh Father, who above you, who other than you should we praise? You and only you deserves all the praise, all the honor, all the glory, all the worship, because you are a good God. You are a loving and caring Father. Lord, you made this earth for us as our home to live in, but we messed it up. And Lord, even us of today, following in the footsteps of our parents, we have not believed you. We have not listened to you. And so we continue to mess our lives and then turn around and blame you for it. Forgive us for our sins, Father. Forgive us for our stupidity and foolishness when we destroy ourselves. I pray for this program. Be with us each day, even as we make the presentations. Pray for the young people of the church. Pray for our church, for the leadership, for your work among the Kenyan community and worldwide. Oh, Father, have mercy on us. May you be manifested amongst us. May thy Spirit work in us mightily, changing us, convicting us, making us your children. Help us to see, open our eyes to see, Father. Open our minds to understand and our hearts to receive thy word and thy truths. Grant us thy refreshing, thy renewal, that we may be new people. Without us, the rest of the program for this week, even tonight, we thank you, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Good night, everyone.